So we've heard today already about 5G standalone, why is it important. I know probably some of you have tuned in into previous conversation, but let's just remind ourselves how big is the market when it comes to private 5G standalone at the moment. So according to Global Mobile Suppliers Association, as of September 2023, there were around 1,200 private mobile networks, and majority of them are still using LTE. And 5G standalone at the moment is still, those devices, those networks are still at very early stages, mostly in testing, and account for about 6% of all those private networks that GSA has accounted for. So this is a little bit background to our conversation. So during the next probably 40 minutes or so, we will try to unravel some of the challenges that we see in the market. And I'm joined by a panel of esteemed industry specialists that we will try to uncover some of the issues. I will encourage the audience to post questions in the Q&A tab so we can also answer those. My name is Sylvia Kashish. I'm the principal analyst at Ookla, a network analytics company. And in case you haven't heard of Ookla, with the brands behind Speedtest, Woodmetrics, Ekahau, and quite a few others. So without further ado, let's just begin with a very quick introduction, and I will go in order of how can I see everybody on the screen, and why is it that you think we're still not at the stage of the evolution to 5G standalone the way we're supposed to be? Why there's still delay, and why we're still at the very early stages? So maybe if I start first with you, Katalin, because you're first on my screen.
Hi everyone, a pleasure to be here. A good day for everyone. My name is Katalin Clement. I'm a global product manager for mobile private networks at Vodafone business. So I'm in charge with, understanding the demand coming from the market and driving the technology roadmap for our private networks proposition. You say that why we're experiencing these delays, right, in 5G SA adoption. I don't believe we're experiencing delays. I believe this market, it's in its early stages of adoption, and we need to recognize that this is the time for innovation and market creation, right? And then there is usually a chasm, as we call it, between innovation and then production, when the customers are feeling more confident in the technology and are able to embrace it and to adopt it into, say, production commercial scale, right? So if we recognize that, and we here at Vodafone, as though we've made some announcements. We recently launched 5G SA mobile private networks proposition in the UK first, and we're preparing another 2 launches by the end of this financial year, and another 2 of our operations. So with all these launches, we're also working a lot on the innovation stage. And basically, we're looking or finding, let's say, solutions or the right approach to help our customers to get from this early innovation stage into the production. And how we're doing this? Actually, we're developing together with our partners a set of, let's say, proof of technology propositions and proof of concept propositions to help our customers understand the technology, what can be done with the technology, and also to let them understand the business case, which is also very important, because 5G, talking about 5G, and not only 5G but also 4G in this private network space, we need to recognize this. It can be quite a significant investment, and obviously the market, the customers need to understand what is the business case around it, right? So this innovation stage, it's very important when we discuss with customers what the technology is, how the technology can be leveraged with running applications on top of that, what's the actual business case, and then what is the right moment and what are the right tools and products and solutions to get into the production stage. And Yeah, I believe we're doing this quite successfully. So we have a set of, let's say, just to give you an example, a set of what they call the 5G in a box kits, right? So we hand this over to customers for a limited set of time, 6 months, 9 months, so they can play with the technology to understand what 5G actually is, what is the difference between 5G SA and say other wireless technologies, namely Wi-Fi in this case, because Wi-Fi has enabled enterprises to mobilize their use cases, but they kind of saw the limits and the limitations of Wi-Fi, and now they are keen to understand what is actually 5G SA and what 5G SA can support. I don't know, with mobility, reliability, ultra low latency, and they want to test this, right? Because they want to understand it. And it's more than that. They need to understand their readiness. They need to understand them, because you see, there is also, yeah, I'm jumping from one thing to another, but the IT OT conversation is also very important. We see usually we engage with the IT departments, and we're trying to address with the cellular reliability, let's say, the OT use cases, right? And this is the stage when we address all these conversations, and we're building the right tools, the business case, and the right engagement internally with the customers, right? Because we recognize there are a lot of challenges here. And once they're ready, let's go to production, right? But definitely there are not that many such situations, but because I mentioned that we launched our proposition, part of that proposition is what we call a pilot. So usually during a pilot, we start with, say, a scaled down version of our product, and also with a, say, an anchor use case. I don't know, maybe visual inspection, maybe digital worker, maybe, I don't know, mixed reality, right? So we choose this anchor use case in order to pilot the product and to help the customers start small and to adapt the solution whilst the demand is coming, and depending on the readiness of the internal enterprise to adopt the solution, right? So it's a journey. It's a
Definitely.
journey, and we need
Definitely.
to introduce the product into the market so that the customers can understand what this is about. But we need to be cognizant that there are various stages, and we need to support our customers in this journey.
That's good to hear. And actually, this nicely, you mentioned IoT, IT, OT, and I think that's very nicely falls into what we want to hear from Budget from Tata Communication. So, what challenges do enterprise face when adopting private 5G networks, and how do you bridge the gap between IT and OT requirements? Because there's a bit of a bridge to gap in there.
Sure.
Bridge the
Hey,
gap.
hi everyone. A very good day to all. So I'm a global product head at Tata Communications for a private network product. I think very interesting question, right? I think when we talk about private network, question raised around the pace of adoption, correct? I think the challenges the enterprises go through, and to me, right, I think the very important thing that I have seen as much as there is compelling case for adoption of private network among enterprises, I think what I've generally seen with my experience working with this enterprise over the last few years is I think I see a big gap between how they look at IT and OT, especially with private networks. So I think there's absolutely it's absolutely important that we look at how this is going to kind of drive adoption of private networks within these enterprises. And also, when you look at this particular thing, right, particularly, I think there are a couple of challenges that I would like to highlight, which enterprises are grappling and we need to address them. One is, of course, the cost and investment. I think considering the composition of what really goes into deploying a private network, right? I think we are talking about acquiring and maintaining a necessary infrastructure. There's an element of spectrum, especially countries where there's no direct allocation of industrial spectrum. Then also the base station, the core network equipments, and so on. So, considering the cost and the investment that they need to typically make for probably a deployment like this, it's equally important for IT and OT budgets to come together to build a business case. I would say probably this is one thing that we need to work towards. Okay, enabling these enterprises to help them do faster adoption. Uh, Second important thing is there is a lot of legacy systems that these enterprises hold, especially on the OT side. How would you possibly become a partner? Okay, not only to deploy a network, but also help them with their OT infrastructure with the new 5G network. I think that's very critical. So they're looking for partners who not only deploy or supply a network to them, it's also about how would they help them bring this legacy into the new fold of connectivity. So third important element I look at is security and compliance. So what's really happening is there's a lot of pressure around robust security measures or compliances that they need to have on this new network, which of course is not something that these enterprises are comfortable or have known to be used to. So hence what's happening is how can you really help both the IT OT come together, bring their respective experts, and work with a partner, okay, to enable in terms of addressing these vulnerabilities, okay, from a holistic and an end-to-end perspective. Of course, cutting across various layers. So there is a concept that we talk about, especially in OT, what is called as a Purdue model, which cuts across layer 0 going up to layer 7. So how can you look at security to come into play, and how could you enable an enterprise to address all levels of security vulnerabilities? That becomes very critical. So the fourth challenge that I have typically seen is there is a lot of apprehension around how do I run and manage this network. It is, of course, perceived to be complex by these enterprises. But beyond that, the biggest challenge that they face is they don't have the skill set or the workforce to manage the complexity that private networks would typically bring compared to their existing landscape. So it is important that and also help them, okay, build those skill sets, competencies, so that one they work with to actually get this whole solution up and running. But beyond that, how do they really sustain in the longer run? I think that becomes equally important. The fifth important challenge that I have seen is use case definition. I think every enterprise, as much as they understand the benefit and merit of private networks or 5G and 5G SA in specific, I think the biggest challenge is being able to drive a return on investment or a TCO or a business case, okay, to move forward with this. So when it comes to this, how do you really drive value out of it? How do you identify those killer use cases, okay, which actually helps you drive use case adoption and TCO and ROI realization? I think that becomes the fifth important one. The sixth, the way I see it, I think the vendor selection. I think it's very, very complex ecosystem when you look at it from an enterprise standpoint, right? There are so many different moving parts. You have a radio network, you have your core, you have your device ecosystem, you have your mech and edge that comes into play. A lot of these moving parts have to be put together and tested from an end-to-end perspective. So how could a partner come in and drive this becomes important. And last but not the least is about how do you on an ongoing basis drive performance optimization of this network and also support the ongoing transformation and innovation these enterprises would like to drive. So in summary, this is what I see as some of the core challenges to solve as I look at addressing those IT OT convergence and challenges around it.
These are quite a few challenges, and I think it once I heard that somebody said to deploy IoT takes a village because it is quite complex, and you have to make sure that all the different ecosystem players work together, as you said, to ensure that security. And I think I'm going to move to Oni now. What do you see from Rakuten perspective? What sort of challenges do you see from customers that plan to deploy private networks in the 5G space, and how are you trying to address those? I mean, we're focusing on challenges very heavily, but I think it's important to address those at the beginning before we start talking about opportunities.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ani Chakravartti. I represent Rakuten Symphony around the global sales for enterprise. It's a great opportunity. As I'll agree with Kathleen and Badri very in synchronized fashion, is the market is maturing. And if you look from the enterprise perspective, the biggest challenge is enterprise is running their core competency things. They are not used to, or rather, they are not into the telecom part of the business, which we live and die all the day. So they are running their operations, they're running their manufacturing sites, they're doing their own, that's their core competency. If you go to any of these vertical enterprises, if you go to retail, you go to manufacturing, you go to automotive, their job is to run their operations successfully. Now, we are trying to make it more efficient by bringing new technologies together. How do we take that challenges out of them and make it easy and seamless? That's one of the biggest challenges they're going through, because yes, everybody knows private 5G, based on all the research, that it will allow enterprises to be more successful and more seamless, and the productivity will increase. The question is, how do we bridge that gap? And my panelist colleagues have shared that IoT, OT conversion or synchronized fashion enables that. What we have seen running telecom operations, working with partners, is one of the things is not one size fits all. We have to be very, very cognizant about the fact that every enterprise has a different set of use cases, and we need to understand that, number one. What we bring to the table, because if you look at, as Badri was mentioning, there's radio unit, there is RUDU, there is core, there is security layer, and then there is orchestration layer. All these are running on top of a cloud native platform in the new versions, because everything has to be agile. The most important thing what we have seen is the customers are saying, bring me a stack which is open, which allows me to select the best in breed, number one, meets my commercial model, number two, and the most important thing, make sure it is certified and running seamlessly. They're expecting that as an operations. That's the basic fundamental of what enterprise is looking for. Don't tell me to mix and match on my own. Show me the entire end-to-end state, which works perfectly fine and allows it. So what we have done from our organization standpoint is we have worked with partners very seamlessly, and many of the other keynote speakers yesterday even spoke about it. Partnership is extremely important in making sure these open environments are created. So what Rakuten Symphony is doing is basically we are investing money and resources and engineering to make sure these entire stack of products are validated. Simon spoke about Druid, Simon spoke about Airspan, and there are a plethora of companies who are coming out with really, really good technology. And we have worked with Druid, along with 3CL, along with Airspan, to make sure those products are tested and certified. Because when we are going to a customer, they do not want to do a science project. They want to test it out, works perfectly fine, works in my use case, and we can be easily deployed. That's how the scaling is going to happen. Because it cannot be a bespoke strategy every time. We have to make sure all these ecosystems are running in a seamless fashion. That's number two. Third is cost. As many of us talked about cost, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that the environment has to be open enough. And when I mean by open, all these individual components have to be open enough for customers to decide, because this is a moving environment. Every organization, enterprise, factories are basically developing and making sure the next new things are coming out of this factory. This is not, you're not just building one thing, you're building multiple things. You need to make sure you keep the environment open to make sure everything is running in a seamless fashion. And obviously, I can talk about technology as the transport layer. Like there are certain set of things like technology point of view, MAC VLAN, the bridge between IP V4, bridge to IPv6 has to be taken into account. Those are all critical piece of it, and I can go into that in detail. The underlying factor is what customers are asking is, bring me an open environment, number one. Bring me a cost-effective environment which meets my go-to-market motion and my enterprise requirement, and make it seamlessly work. Don't come out with individual things which is going to jeopardize my productivity over a period of time. So what we have done is few things. Number one is we have partnered with the right ecosystem players. We have built and tested the product extensively to make sure the customers are getting the best performance out of the best in breed. Third, we have trained people from both sides, not only from the partner ecosystem side, also from the partner standpoint, from the channel who are going to be delivering this technology, because somebody has to stitch all this together. And working with them and making sure they understand every product stack together and bringing a stack together. That's what we are doing. And obviously trying to make sure we are keeping up to date with the latest technology coming to the market. So that's where we are going with our offerings, if you will. I'll stop there and we can have more conversations around it.
Thank you, Ani, and thank you all so far. And I think we were already getting some interesting questions from the audience, so I'm gonna move to Dr. Zhang Zhe. You mentioned Red Cap and how it contributes to the advancements of 5G standalone technology. Could you bring some real life use cases of how it can be deployed? And we also got a very specific question in terms of with 5G Red Cap, how many antennas minimum are required on the IoT devices?
Hi, yeah. So I would be happy to elaborate more on the 5G reduced capability, the so-called Red Cap. Used to call NR Lite, but I think that name is already taken. So we kind of switched to reduced capability device. So I mean, keep in mind that in the RIS 15, right, the first standards when 5G designed, the main the target is that okay, the UE the baseline the device needs to have 4x antennas to have a higher data rate. But later on, I mean, the truth is that not everyone require very high data rate applications. And then for I think on all this people talking about the cost being cost effective. So having a reduced capability device, so it's going to reduce your equipment on operating cost. So the 5G, the IoT device, they can have a minimum 1RX antennas, and then there are like designs to basically to have with so-called the coverage recovery, because now you reduce from your 4x antennas to 1x antenna. Not only there's a throughput reduction, but also the coverage may be affected. So there's a 5G design which basically call that coverage recovery to in order to still have a good coverage even with a reduced number of antennas on the device. Yeah, so with the Red Cap devices, you can see that once you lower down the cost of device, it allows people to deploy the 5G IoT network so that you can have more and more devices, and especially those are very important. As I said, maybe for the warehouse, logistics, and also smart grid, where you are really anyway not looking for very, very high data rate to start with.
So really talking about the density, that's one of the 5G, the triangle, so EMBB that we focused on, so really fast data rates. We're talking massive density, and we're talking about our latency. That's the third pillar of 5G. Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think we're getting, again, quite a lot of interesting questions coming from the audience, but I think we should maybe talking about how can we, being still bearing in mind what Katalin has said, we're still in the kind of proof of technology before we can really go to proof of concept when it comes to 5G standalone networks. How can we drive a wider adoption of private networks? So we have a question here saying that private networking took off in China, that was supported by mobile network operators. Should we expect similar shifts elsewhere? And kind of what was the difference between private networks, network slicing, and maybe we can kick off with you, Badri. Can you talk about how Tata Communication is approaching and driving the adoption of private networks, and then maybe we can go around the table for the operators.
Sure. Thanks, Sylvia. I think very important, right? Tata Communication being a non-conventional service provider, we don't play in the B2C space. So we mostly focus on the B2B, focus on the top 500 plus enterprises worldwide with a lot of network connectivity as well as digital products. So when we look at this particular mix, right, I think we have heavily invested in private networks in the last 2 years. And I think coming back to this whole topic of standalone architecture. We have been natively working on standalone architecture because we believe the true value of private network can only be realized, okay, by enterprises in a standalone mode. Hence, our journey through and through has only been with standalone architecture. So coming back to this whole point of about how we are doing this. See, one is we are talking about how can we be one single partner for enterprises, just like Oni rightly put it. I think the enterprises will focus on what is their core. Okay, they don't want to actually diagnose from what is their core. If there's a manufacturing enterprise, they will focus on manufacturing. So they don't want to go and run a technology which is completely new to them. So in line with that, what we are doing at Tata Communications is we are trying to look at being a partner to these enterprises, deploying a network in a industrial connectivity as a service from an end-to-end perspective. So we own the complete outcome. So what it means to us and to the enterprises. So we have to work towards developing and building a stack, which is of course supporting a standalone architecture. We need to bring the right mix of strategic partners. Okay, in this, I'll give you one example of what we are trying to do with Rakuten, for example. Okay, like I think Oni also spoke about, right? Today we are working with Rakuten on their Robin cloud native platform. Okay, where we are talking about managing complex data, applications, and network workloads and applications. This is very, very critical. Similarly, for example, if I'm talking about a core, we are working with strategic partners who actually are core vendors, okay, who are operating in a standalone mode or SA cores. So the point I'm making is we make very selective decisions around what are key strategic partners. How do we ensure that a complete stack comes together and we drive and deliver a complete outcome to an enterprise? And because I think there is no room for, like what Oni rightly put it, right? This is not an academic exercise. This is not a project for an enterprise. This runs the core and the critical part of what they do as part of their business. Okay, so that is how we approach it. I think uh, the point I'm making is it's very, very important that enterprises get an option to work with right set of partners, platforms, and the right mix of what they would do in terms of use cases as well. So that is what we normally do with most enterprises globally. Thank you, Sylvia. I stopped it.
Perfect. And maybe in a few words, Kathleen, can you address
Yeah.
what you're doing from Vodafone point of view?
Yeah. Also coming a bit from the customer angle, right? Over the last, say, 5 years in which we're activating in this private space, we looked at all the use cases and we realized that out of the, say, overall potential for use cases or for user devices within an enterprise, almost 60% of them would require some sort of support from the public network. 40% would require mobility on and off, let's say private to public, and 60% would require some sort of support from the public network, right? And this is why we're looking also to leverage our, let's say, uh, existing networks and existing capabilities. And this is where also slicing is coming into play. We see slicing, 5G slicing over public network as being our tool to give an extension of the campus into the public network with a certain degree of quality of service and similar SLA like the one that we can offer in the isolated space in the campus version of the MPN or the private network. So slicing from a private network perspective, it's one way of extending the campus into the public space, and to enable those 40 percent of the SIMs that would require mobility on and off the public and the private space, right? And we've seen this from our interaction with customers, and we also, according to a study from released by Obdia, 75% of the enterprises would expect a hybrid uh, public and private 5G system or infrastructure in order to support the roaming between the two type of networks, right? So we're working to meet this kind of demand, this kind of use cases, and yeah, entertaining a lot of other versions, not only 5G SA standalone isolated private network, but also the hybrid versions for private networks. The hybrid versions meaning those networks that are leveraging also the public assets. Hybrid private network with, say, dedicated traffic with dedicated coverage and also local data breakout for the enterprise resources, and also access, let's say, to the public services to enable voice access to other services and so on. I mentioned slicing as being an extension of the MPN, and also looking to enable mobility between the two via multi-profile, multi-IMSI type of solutions. So this is how we are trying to address all the use cases that are potentially available in an enterprise space and to leverage, yes, the 5G and the cellular technologies. And I'm talking cellular, not only 4G, 5G, because 5G, 4G is here. It's able to deliver most of the use cases, especially those that are connectivity driven. There are connectivity driven use cases, and moreover, there are, from our perspective, connectivity driven verticals, such as utilities, oil and gas. They're not that much interested in ultra low latency or in high performance, say, capabilities, and they're quite comfortable to go and address their business requirements or challenges with LTE. So we've seen also from the presentation
Definitely.
and the reports from SCF that LTE is here to stay for a while. And according to those graphs, the crossover is going to happen somewhere in 2027. So there is a market for both, and this is where we as an operator are looking to play.
Trying to play. Perfect, thank you. And I think I'm going to ask the rest of panelists, what is the verticals that you're seeing adopting 5G SA first? And what sort of timelines are we looking for this to become not maybe commercially available? And when do you think we're going to scale beyond proof of concepts into wider deployments? Maybe start with Dr. Zhang Zhang. And apologies, I can't pronounce your name properly. I'm really sorry. So we're talking about use cases and verticals and timelines. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Actually, yeah. I think one of the as we mentioned, right. So besides I mean, if you're only looking for the mobile broadband services, then of course the 5G standalone may not be a must. But however, if you're looking for more stringent requirements, for example, the Industrial 4.0, so where 5G is designed to introduce this like 6 9, like reliability, like 10 to the point of minus 6, as those reliability, and also the latency has to be like single digit millisecond. So it's not like you can keep retransmitting forever, right, to get the packet correctly. So those features are only available with 5G, where we have the basically spatial diversity. Then we also add in the PDCP duplication, which allows us to deliver the packet within the stringent timeline. And then the other one, what I also want to point out for the Industrial.0, in lots of times that you need all the devices in the network to be synchronized within like up to a certain accuracy. And then 5G is designed for this like time sensitive network, which allows you to deploy the feature in order to support that use cases. And then in addition, right, I just mentioned that also in a factory, if you the workers wear the XR glasses, then you have to support the low latency boundless XR applications, and that can also be enabled with 5G private network by itself, not with Wi-Fi, not with 4G, and those are the ones that 5G introduced. And indeed, the 5G, when it designed to be, it meant to include all the vertical applications in, where compared to the 4G, where it's only tapping for the mobile broadband service. So, and then later on in RIS 17, as kind of in my talk I mentioned before, so when the industry moves on, then people realize actually in lots of use cases that you may not need a very high data rate requirement. So where the cost may be the driving factor. That's why the RedCap devices are also introduced. So those are, we see that it's you can see it's an innovation where the 5G brings besides the mobile broadband service, and it's meant to embrace the vertical applications in mind. And another important thing which I want to mention is network slicing, right? Because when you deploy a network, I mean, you have lots of use cases, even in your network. I think, like maybe Simon, I've already mentioned that, okay, you have lots of different requirements for different private network. But the truth is that even in a single private network, you have lots of use cases, applications, right? Because some traffic may require low latency. Some traffic maybe just like eMBB, some traffic need both, like XR, it has latency and throughput requirement. So, and then some devices, you also need a positioning. So those are in putting all of them together. So if you have one size fit all, then you are not able to fully harvest your network capacity. So then with network slicing, so the way it works is that you can provision the resources and reserve for each traffic category and ensure that the traffic reservation is good for the end-to-end quality of service delivery. So I think this the network slicing is one of the key features in the 5G standalone architecture. And I would say those features are very beneficial for the vertical expansion on the 5G.
Perfect, thank you. And maybe last question to Badri and Oni. Which verticals do you see as adopting 5G standalone, and what sort of timelines do you see happening from your perspective when you're going to be moving towards just moving beyond proof of concepts to wider deployments, wider scale?
Okay.
But do you want to go first? I'll go later.
Yes, Sony.
It's up to you, gentlemen.
Okay. So I think in my experience, right, I've been working with enterprises, especially on private network for over 4 years now. If you ask me, my personal take is I think, especially if you look at probably energy and utilities or in specific mines, I've been one of the early adopters. But I think today the significant chunk of where I've seen the traction with respect to private network interest or adoption is being with manufacturing and automotive predominantly. And I think next comes maybe ports. There has been significant interest with ports and followed by smart cities, or I would term it as smart communities, because smart cities being a larger format, I would say there has been significant interest with smaller format of smart cities, which is smart communities or counties, I could call it. So this is where I've seen bulk of the interest or adoption. And again, one of the other aspects that I found is I think there's a typical question that people ask, which is that killer use case or an application that I need to start with. Okay, my take is I
Yeah.
think there's nothing called killer use case on application as yet, because what I've seen is across enterprises in the same sector. Okay, I've seen similar challenges, though presented to us. The way you solve them are quite different. So, to me, a lot of these things would be more horizontal in nature. I think these are all platform centric. A lot of these are horizontal capabilities, and the way you solve these challenges of enterprises could be quite different. Okay, so at least having said all this, I think a few key things which I found is of immense interest with enterprises, especially when you look at use case enablement, irrespective of the sector, is one is indoor positioning or indoor location services. Okay, I think this is something that they believe could possibly help them drive what you could call as a killer use case. Okay, or they can towards developing those specific capabilities which will address a long-standing what you say requirement of these enterprises. Second, of course, has been more to do with mobility. I think, especially with mobility, right? I think with automation coming into play, a lot of mobility requirements are spanning out across industries and sectors, especially with AGVs, AMRs, drones, all of this coming into play. I think mobility support becomes very important the way I've seen with these enterprises. And the last one is, of course, because today majority of what we are able to deliver both with public and private networks is more bandwidth centric use cases. I would say one of the top picks have been computer vision uh, driven use cases. So this is where I've seen bulk of opportunities from my experience in the past. Sorry, Oni, please, over to you.
No, it's absolutely. I think you're absolutely bang on target. I'll just move it one step. One thing which we are seeing is edge is becoming very critical in these kind of environments. How to leverage the edge effectively, because the way people are deciding today is not everything has need not to go to the backhaul situation. They want the compute to happening at the edge level, and when you have a distributed edge environment, you need to make sure. So if you look at the industries where we require a lot of edge, like automobile, manufacturing, plants sitting in different places, we want a lot of these people who are looking for that kind of connectivity. I agree with Badri. So that's an area where we are seeing opportunities coming up very fast, because it's not driven by technology, it's driven by the need of that market to take a decision so that they can increase their productivity at the edge level, quickly turn around. If a car manufacturing can increase by 15 minutes, there is a millions of dollars which can be generated, which can offset the cost of the private 5G deployment. So I think we need to make that into a concept or the reality, if you will, and that's where we are seeing the opportunity.
Definitely, and thank you. And I think what we always say when it comes to enterprise use cases, it is not all about technology, it's about solving a problem and the best way to solve the problem. Again, is either reducing cost, increasing revenue, and sort of other cost saving, which is important. And I think we very much running out of time. I mean, we could talk about edge, IoT, spectrum, because we had some question on spectrum, whether spectrum should be licensed, unlicensed, and so on. But if I just can ask for maybe 3 words, well, one sentence wrap up, where do you see 5G standalone networks, private networks, heading in the near term? What's next in the short term and the longer term for private networks when it comes to, as it pertains 5G standalone? Maybe starting again now, the other way around. So Oni, then Badri.
I would say it's a massive, as Kathleen started, it's a massive opportunity in the market. I think there is going to be a migration from Wi-Fi to private 5G quite fast because the market demand and the environment and the need of the market is going to drive that. It's not the question of technology. Again, I'm saying it. We would require that kind of processing requirement, which will drive. The question is how fast we can grow, how fast we can partner together in the ecosystem and drive that messaging. That's my view. Over to you, Badri.
Thanks, Oni. Thanks, Oni. I can't agree more with what Oni just said. Just let me give you a perspective, right? We, being a global player, we work with enterprises worldwide. And as we speak, I can tell you, uh, when you talk about adoption, because like I said, we natively focus on B2B and captive networks, and it's completely standalone what we do today. With all said and done, I can tell you that as we speak, I've got a handful of large enterprise customers that I'm talking to right now, where we are in the final leg of a commercial closure for a full scale deployment. So the point I'm making is, I think we are not too far away. I think the enterprise have gone past the phase of what do you say, academic exercise of understanding what a private network is or what a 5G would bring onto the table. And I think it's today more about is there a business case, is there a need, is there a technology partner who can actually empower, enable them to do more and quickly. I think that is where it stands. And if they find the right partner, a right mix of what do you say, capability, compelling case or a business case for them to move forward, I don't think anything should stop these enterprises from adoption. I would only say from now, I think you will start seeing quite a lot of uptake by enterprises, especially with this adoption worldwide.
Thank you. Dr. Zhang, what's your perspective?
Yes, yeah, I guess I totally echoing what the other two speakers said. Actually, we see this is you can see that it's a great opportunity, right? So on the current the private network, which deployed by other technologies, clearly the use cases supported by those private networks are very, very limited. So, and we see there's a big opportunity for 5G private network with standalone architectures to be deployed so that you can embrace and unleash the full potential of the 5G. And keep in mind, the 5G was designed to keep all those use cases in mind. Where if I recall that in LT later days, I mean, we're trying to do some change. It's very, very rigid, right? That's why people are saying, okay, when we design the 5G, we realize that towards the end of 4G, that mobile broadband services is just one of the applications, and you need to design your wireless network so that you can embrace other use cases as well. I will see that, okay, I see a big like huge opportunities of the 5G to be deployed in a private network. And the other thing, which I also want to mention, that the 5G private network allows you to have basically embrace all the use cases, not only for the connectivity. I think one of the panelists discussed also the indoor precise positioning, right? So the idea of the 5G is that you deploy private network, you get all of these use cases covered, including both connectivity and localization. And indeed, the 5G location technique allows you to go the indoor with a centimeter level accuracy. Actually, I think in one of my talk, we also showed a demo that allows you to, you can deploy 5G that you can achieve better location services in addition to this demanding connectivity requirement. So yeah, I would say that, okay, this is a huge opportunity for people to embrace 5G, deploy in the applications, and then see that how it helps.
Perfect, thank you. And Katalin, a bit of a question for you, last question of today's session. Why would enterprises migrate from Wi-Fi to cellular, and when do you see 5G standalone private networks taking off on a larger scale?
I'll give you a different view. So I don't see it 5G or cellular versus Wi-Fi. I believe they will play a role together. They will be complementary. I like to refer to private 5G as being the evolution of LAN. Let's not forget that the enterprises are now being served by cabled Ethernet networks, which are quite performance, time-sensitive networks with Ethernet with their industrial versions, right? They are quite in place with the limitation that they are not able to support the mobile use cases. They also have the Wi-Fi, which is mobile, but maybe not that performant in terms of reliability and security and so on. And you see 5G private network is coming to bring the best of the both worlds, mobility of Wi-Fi and also performance of the cable Ethernet. So this is how I see 5G playing in the future, basically private 5G, obviously with its SA version because it's the most evolved and future-proofed and is delivering the promise of being the most reliable with mobility in hand. So 5G SA, private 5G SA being the evolution of the existing LAN networks, bringing the best of
Perfect.
the both worlds. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we're definitely now over the time. So thank you so much to my panelists. Really appreciate your time and your knowledge. Thank you.